I stand in front of a door that has no bell. It doesn't creak, it doesn't breathe, it doesn't hint at a presence. Just is. And I just am too. Uninvited, unexpelled. As if I had accidentally ended up here. In a corridor where the walls are silent and the air smells of other people's stories. I don't know why I came here. Maybe because it used to be warm here. Or maybe because I couldn't find another place where I could just stand. Not ask. Not explain. Just be. This letter is not an attempt to convince anyone. It's not a request. It's not a cry. It's a testimony. I want to leave it here on the doorstep as proof that I was. That I had a voice, even if no one heard it. They're not waiting for me. And it's not a tragedy. It's a fact. Like rain that falls even if no one looks out the window. Like a song that no one turns on, but it still exists. Like me. I don't have to be wanted to be valuable. This sentence sounds like a shield, but sometimes it sounds like a knife. 'Cause I want to be wanted. I want the door to open. For someone to say, I'm glad you came. But if that doesn't happen, I'll stay anyway. I'm allowed to be afraid. And I am afraid. Not that they won't let me in. But that I'll disappear if they don't let me in. That my silence will become so loud that I won't be able to hear myself. I remember when I was little. Then I too stood in front of the door. Only it was wooden, scratched, and my mother was behind it. I was afraid to knock because I thought she would say, now is not the time. And I didn't knock. I just sat on the stairs, listening to someone in the room talking on the phone. I wasn't wanted then. But I was. And I was valuable even if no one said so. This letter is not about resentment. It's about memory. About how important it is to leave a mark, even if no one is looking for it. About how important it is to be yourself, even if you are not recognized. I don't know if anyone will ever find this letter. Maybe it will remain here on the doorstep until the wind takes it away. But I know that I wrote it. And that already means that I have not disappeared. I don't wait for an answer. I don't wait for an open door. I simply leave myself here. In words, in silence, in the right to be. I don't know when exactly fear stopped being an enemy. Maybe when I stopped running. When instead of closing my eyes, I left them open, even in the dark. Fear did not disappear. Simply sat next to me. Not like a monster, but like a shadow that doesn't want to eat me, but just to be there so that I am not alone. I was afraid for a long time. I was afraid of being unnecessary. I was afraid that my words were superfluous. That my gestures were awkward. That my presence was a burden. And every time I felt it, I would shrink inside, as if trying to become smaller, less noticeable. But the fear wouldn't go away. Just got closer. And I started to listen to it. He didn't shout. He whispered, "You're afraid because you matter." And I realized, fear is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of importance. I'm afraid because I care. Because I want to be a part. Because I want to be seen. Not as a function, not as a convenience, but as a person. This discovery was painful. Because it didn't bring relief. It brought the truth. And the truth isn't always gentle. It doesn't pat you on the head. It just stands in front of you and says, here you are. Here's your fear. And here's your dignity. They can live together. I started writing this letter not because I'm strong. It's because I'm tired of hiding. I don't want to be a shadow anymore. I want to be a body, a voice, a gesture. Even if they don't expect me. Even if the door remains closed. Fear hasn't disappeared. Just changed form. Now it's like an old friend who reminds me that I'm alive. That I have a heart. That I'm not indifferent. And I'm grateful to him. Because without him I wouldn't be writing. I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't be leaving a trace. I remember one evening. I was sitting in the kitchen, and Yulia was silent. Her eyes were full of something that couldn't be named. And I was afraid to say something unnecessary. I was afraid to break the silence. But fear didn't make me silent. He simply said, "Speak, even if your voice trembles." And I said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." And she cried. And that was right. Fear is not something to be conquered. Something to be accepted. It's not an enemy. It's a part of me. And when I allow it to be, I become whole. This letter is not about convincing someone to open the door. It is about not disappearing, even if the door remains closed. It is about saying to yourself, you have a right to be afraid. But you also have a right to be. I don't know if anyone will read these words. But I know that I wrote them. And that already means that I have not disappeared. There are places I will never return to. Not because they are gone, they still exist. But I have become different. And those doors that were once open are now silent. I am not angry. I am not offended. I have simply learned to live with the fact that not all roads lead back. Memory is my home. Not walls, not a roof, not an address. But the moments that I carry within me. They are not always warm. Some are like cold water that burns when you touch it. But even they are mine. And I do not want to erase them. Because without them I would be empty. I remember how Yulia once said, you always leave something behind you. Even when you are silent. And then I thought, what if memory is the only thing that really remains? Not things. Not status. But the way you touched someone's heart. How you were silent next to them when words were superfluous. How you didn't leave, even when you weren't asked to stay. This letter is also a memory. Not for someone. For myself. So as not to forget who I was when I wasn't expected. So as not to erase myself in an attempt to be comfortable. So as not to lose my voice, even if it only sounds in silence. I remember how Yulia and I sat on a bench, and she held my hand, as if she was afraid that I would disappear. And then I thought, I won't disappear. I will stay, even if they don't call me. Because being is not always about being recognized. Sometimes it's just about being there. Memory is something that doesn't need permission. Comes by itself. And I allow it to be. Even if it hurts. Because pain is also proof. Proof that I loved. That I was alive. That I mattered. I don't want to forget myself when I'm not expected. Because that's when I need myself the most. Not as a hero. And as a witness. As someone who will say, I saw you. I remember you. I didn't leave you. This letter is like a photograph that no one will print. But it is there. It exists. And that is enough. I don't know if anyone will ever say, I remember you. But I know that I remember myself. And this is my home. My silence. My truth. There are things that don't shine. They don't cause admiration. They don't collect likes. But they are the foundation. Dignity is one of them. Doesn't scream. It doesn't ask for attention. Just is. Like a shadow that is always there, even when the light changes. For a long time I thought that dignity was something external. That it was manifested in how you are seen. How you are evaluated. What you are called. But then I realized, true dignity is what you carry inside, even when you are not seen. Especially then. This letter is not about proving your worth. It is about not losing it when you are not expected. When you come and they don't open the door for you. When you speak and they don't listen to you. When you love and they don't answer you. And still, you remain yourself. I remember how Yulia once said, you don't try to be better, you just are. And then I felt something strange. As if my silence had become important. As if my presence, unadorned and proven, had weight. And that was dignity. Not because I had done anything. But because I had not disappeared. Dignity is when you do not betray yourself, even if it is uncomfortable. When you do not become louder to be heard. When you do not become softer to be accepted. When you do not become different to be loved. It is when you stay. And you do not apologize for it. I am not a hero. I am not perfect. I have fears, doubts, weaknesses. But I have something that cannot be taken away. My dignity does not depend on the doors that open. It does not depend on the words that are spoken to me. It is mine. And I will not give it away. This letter is like a stone that I put on the threshold. Not so that anyone stumbles. And so that someone might stop. Feel. And even if no one stops, I know that I left him. And that already means that I didn't betray myself. I don't expect applause. I don't expect recognition. I just want to be honest. With myself. with those I love, with those who might one day read these words and say, I too stood in front of the door, and I didn't disappear either. Dignity is when you don't leave, even if you're not called, when you don't scream, even if you're not heard, when you don't break down, even if you're not accepted. This is when you stay, and don't apologize for it. I no longer stand in front of the door, not because it opened, and not because I left, but because I stopped waiting, not out of resentment, not out of fatigue, but out of understanding. My life is not a corridor of waiting. This is a space that I can fill myself. Acceptance is not defeat. It is not I don't care. It is I see everything as it is, and I choose myself anyway. It is when you don't fight the silence, but listen to it. When you don't try to change others, but allow yourself to be real. When you don't wait for permission to breathe. For a long time I thought that acceptance was the end, that it was the moment you gave up. But now I know, it is the beginning. It is the moment when you stop living in expectation and start living within yourself. When you don't look for validation but create a space where you feel good. I didn't disappear. I didn't become less important. I just stopped depending on doors, on voices, on reactions. I remained myself, and that is the most valuable thing I could do. I remember how Yulia and I lay in silence and she said, I don't need you to do anything. Just be. And then I realized, being is enough. Not proving, not saving, not changing. Just being with yourself, with her, with life. This letter is not about convincing anyone. It's about not losing yourself. Not becoming a shadow in someone else's light. Not forgetting that I have the right to space, even if it's not next to those I love. Acceptance is when you tell yourself, I'm not needed here, and that doesn't make me any less. It's when you don't look for the guilty. You don't look for reasons. You simply admit, this is not my place, but I have mine. And you go where they don't expect you, but where you can expect yourself. I don't know if anyone will ever find this letter. Maybe it will be left on the doorstep, get wet from the rain, disappear into the dust. But I know that I wrote it. And that already means that that I chose myself, that I didn't disappear. I don't wait any longer. I don't knock. I don't ask. Just go. Not loudly. Not with defiance. But with dignity. With memory. With fear that became a friend. And with acceptance that became freedom.